Hello and welcome back to Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney, and in today's video, I'm showing you how to do an alternative waistband finish. So many of the waistbands on our pants often get folded under on the inside, think jeans, where it's really suitable for top stitching in place. But a lot of ready-to-wear trousers you will find do not finish off the inside of their waistbands that way. Instead, you'll find likely a line of bias tape that is finished off the inside edge of that waistband, or maybe a little ribbon that has finished that off in both men's and women's wear. So this technique works really great if you would like a more streamlined waistband, such that I've put here on the Bridget trousers by Love Notion, where I don't want any visible top stitching. Everything is done seamlessly. That way you're a little more straightforward, so you're not seeing that top stitching. That's not the look that I wanted on this pair of pants. And I find it a little bit quicker and easier way to put this on as well. So without further ado, let's head over to the pressing station and let's get started sewing our waistbands. Okay, so for this tutorial, we need three things. We need the finished tops of your pants. I still have my zipper extending well past because I like to trim that off after I sew the waistband on, which we will do. And on the pants, I have gone ahead and I have basted my belt loops in place. So my belt loops are basted in place at 1/4 of an inch. The pattern that I'm using here is the Bridget's, and it is a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've basted all of my belt loops in right sides together. So this is the wrong side of the belt loop facing up right now at that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, because I'll just leave that in there. And then we need our outer waistband, which is all sewn together at my two side seams, and this is the one that's interfaced. And then I need my inner waistband, which is not interfaced, also sewn together at the side seams, and I have finished off the longer edge. So if you're looking at your waistband, you've got a longer edge and a shorter edge. The shorter edge is what gets at the top of the waist. This is what gets attached to the top of the pants. So the bottom edge that's going to be attached to the top of the pants when all is said and done, I've gone ahead and finished that. I've used a serger, but you could finish this off with bias tape, zigzag stitch, whatever your preference is for finishing off that raw edge, you can do, okay? So that is what our pieces look like. So our first thing is that we are going to, and I've got my pants inside out right now, but I'm going to take my outer waistband, the interfaced one, take that longer edge, and I am going to pin it to the top of the pants, and I'm pinning it over the belt loops. So I'm just going to pin this in place, match my side seams. I match all my major points, and then I go back and fill in. Keeping in mind that at the front of the pant, your waistband should extend 3/8 of an inch past, on this side, past that fly shield, and on the other side, oh, sorry, that's not the fly shield. On this side, past center front, and on the other side, past the fly shield. So it should extend, your raw edge of your waistband should extend past that 3/8 of an inch, or whatever your seam allowance is. My seam allowance is 3/8. All right, now once we have everything pinned in place, we are going to go together to, oh, I need to trim off the top of that fly shield. I left it long. We need to go to the machine, and we are going to stitch this in place. So let's go over there and do that. All right, I'm going to sew this with my waistband up, so the facing side up. And we are just going to start at one edge and go all the way around that waistband. If you are using a zipper with metal teeth, be careful going over that zipper. Mine has nylon teeth, so that is, I'm not going to break a needle on those, but be careful. All right, now we're going to go back to the pressing station and do some pressing. Okay, first things first, I'm going to, we want to make sure that we caught everything appropriately all the way around on the pant side, that nothing got folded up, everything looks good. I'm now going to trim my zipper off. Make sure that your zipper pull is down and amongst the pants so you don't accidentally trim that off. I have done that before. And then on this side, like I said, I had my fly shield going up a little tall. So I'm going to trim that flush. These are my zipper cutting scissors. These are not good scissors. All right. Now I'm going to take my tailor's ham and really quickly press this seam up into the waistband. Okay, once we have done that, I am going to now, and this is all in this pattern. If you were making the Bridget, this is all in the pattern. I'm going to take my belt loops and I'm going to pull them up and I'm going to base them to the top of this waistband piece at the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go do that real quickly on the machine and then I'll be right back. All right, so I've got those belt loops now all basted in place there at the top of that waistband. Now we are going to take our other waistband piece, and we're going to do this in a few passes. We are going to put this, actually, let's turn our pants right side out now. All right, here's our pants so far. So now we're going to take our other waistband piece, and we're going to pin it together, right sides together. We are only going to be sewing the seam that goes along the top of the pant, and then we will match raw edges to raw edges here on this one. So this still extends past the pant, the 3/8 inch, but that's fine. We will get that in a minute. So match all of your side seams. All right, now we're going to go to the machine and we're going to sew just along this top edge as the seam. Oops. So we are going to stitch this top seam and then we are going to understitch it. So we're going to do 2 passes here. And I am sewing with the interfaced piece up. And I've got 3/8 inch seam allowance, so that's what I'm using here. And as a reminder, I've not done anything with the short ends of this waistband yet. Okay, that's what we want. These are still loose. That's fine. All right, now we're going to flip this over and we're going to open our waistband out. So here's my interface waistband piece. This is my facing, and we are understitching. So I want this seam allowance that we just sewed to be going towards the facing, and I'm going to sew at just, I don't know, like a 1/16 inch away from the sewing line we just made. And as I go, I'm making sure that that seam allowance is going towards the facing and that I'm just kind of gently pulling that seam away. All right, now we're going to finish off our short ends, and I do kind of a burrito method on this. So let's go back to the pressing station and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so here we have our waistband, and it's extending past center front here on each side by the seam allowance, which is 3/8 inch. And then I've got my interface waistband, and then here's the facing. So what we are going to do, and we'll go slow, is we are going to take our facing waistband and bring it down like this, so that the seam allowance is going up. Now we're going to take this facing and wrap it around so that it is now right sides together with the interfaced waistband. And that seam allowance down here is going to want to go towards the facing because that's how we sewed it when we understitched it. Now, this is fiddly, but it gives the best finish. So I'm just going to take this seam allowance here and kind of wrap it. And now what we are going to do is we are going to sew from this folded, from the seam allowance edge down until we get to that line of stitching we've just done. And we're going to pivot and stitch, I don't know, not that far, like maybe an inch into that. We can't go too far. Okay, so we're going to go stitching on that previous stitch line, but only like an inch. So let's do that with this side too, and then I'll take you over to the sewing machine to do it together. So we've got this, everything is up. We're going to pull it down to where now that seam allowance, that first seam allowance we sewed is up. Now we're going to take the facing and wrap it so it's right sides together with that waistband. Kind of like rolling this into that area, but kind of trying to keep it out of the way because we don't want to accidentally sew on top of anything we don't mean to sew on top of. But at the same time, and again, that seam allowance wants to go towards the facing, so I kind of roll it that way. All right, so on this side, we're going to start here. We're going to go whoop up to our previous stitch line and stitch like an inch in. So let's go to the machine and do that. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start at the folded end. We'll be coming at this two different ways on the either sides. At my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to start right at that. If you want to go slow, if that helps, that's fine. And we will check this before we trim anything. Until I get to my previous stitch line, which is right there. Then I'm going to pivot, turn it. And again, I'm only sewing not very far in here. Like that's probably good. And now we will just take a look. Oh. On either side. And now we can also take this and turn it right side out and check how that's looking. And that all looks good. Everything's laying nice and, sorry, you can't see anything. Everything's laying nice and flat, so I can go ahead and trim that side. I need my scissors though to do that. Here they are. Trim that little thread. So once we know everything is good, we can trim our corner down here and also just a little bit of that bulk on those two corners. And then again, flip that. And this is what, we'll discuss this a little bit more after I show you the other side, but this is what it'll do. It'll tuck in right here a little bit, and then we want it to kind of untuck right there. If you look at ready to wear trousers, a lot of them finish off this way, except a lot of times it's a bias facing or maybe a ribbon or something that they've sewn onto the bottom of the waistband. But that is very common for it to look just like that. So now we're going to do the other side. So the other side, we are going to start on the previous line of stitching because it's the opposite side in order to get everything in there. So we'll start right about there. Just plant my needle. And we'll just stitch a little bit along that previous line of stitching. And then when we get one more stitch. There we go. And now we will go up to that fold. and back stitch, back stitch, back stitch. All right, so the same thing, we're just gonna flip this right side out, check it. And that looks exactly as it should. So we can turn it back wrong side again and just trim those corners. Get some of that bulk out of there. And there we go. All right, let's go back to the pressing station to finish this off. All right, so when we look at our fronts, from the right side, it's just how you would expect them to look. You can kind of get in there and poke stuff out if you need to, so that when they're fastened, everything looks really good there. But everything is still open here on the inside. So now what we are going to do is I like to put my tailor's ham under here. We are now going to go around and we are going to sew down our facing. And it should cover your previous line of stitching by your seam allowance. So 3/8 of an inch. So my seam allowance, line of stitching for my seam allowance is about 3/8 of an inch above there. And again, here at the front, it's going to tuck under and then we want it to come out. This just makes stitching from the right side, stitching in the ditch, you always catch it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Okay. So that is what we're going to pin. Now, you can do this a couple of different ways. You can go around and you can give it a good press here at the top of the waistband. Ponte likes to be a little difficult sometimes, just in not wanting to press like great sometimes. You can press it from the back first or pin it from the back first and then flip it over and pin it from the front. Completely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and turn my pants inside out and just pin from the front, and we're just going to check as we go. But whatever is easiest for you, whatever is going to cause the least amount of stress is the correct way. All right, so I am just going to go around slowly around the top of the pant here. I can feel things pretty well. And I am just going to pin right where I'll be stitching, which is in the ditch of that previous seam. And I'm making sure that that seam is staying pressed up into the waistband. And then we are going to go to the machine and we're going to stitch in the ditch. And what that means is that we're going to stitch right along this previous stitch line to where it's hidden. And this just gives a really clean finish from the right side of the pant if you're doing something like a trouser, where you don't want to have a lot of visible top stitching, which is the look that I would like for this particular pair. If I were making jeans or something a little more casual, jeans inspired, then I would want the top stitching. All right, so now we can check the back, make sure we've caught that facing down, and I think we're good to go all the way around. That all looks good. So now we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to stitch in the ditch along that seam line. All right, so I'm just going to plant my needle right there in that seam, and we're just going from one side of the pant to the other. But as I go, I'm kind of pulling that seam apart a little bit. Also watch your zipper. Because I want, when everything kind of is lying flat, I want that my line of stitching to be covered. And also, when I come up to a belt loop. I'm pushing it up out of the way, so I'm sewing kind of underneath that belt loop. You can alternatively sew down the belt loop if you want a line of top stitching there at the bottom of the belt loop. That's fine. Completely up to you and the aesthetic that you would like. All right, so as you can see, and we'll go look at this above, you can kind of see that line of top stitching here, but once the fabric has relaxed and we've given it a good press, you're not even going to be able to see that line of stitching, but it has stitched down the facing all the way around the inside of the pants to finish that off really nicely. So I'm just going to trim my excess threads here, and let's go take a look overhead. All right, so there is our finished waistband. The last thing to do is just to give everything a good press those belt loops down. And there you go. An alternative way to finish off a waistband. It's much easier, much less fiddly, and it honestly is the way that a lot of trouser patterns get finished off and ready to wear. So something to keep in mind, and a really easy way to finish off the top of the pant. As always, if you have any questions, leave them down below. I'm happy to answer those. Happy sewing. And there you go. This is a deviation from the pattern instructions for the Bridget Trousers by Love Notions, but I wanted to show you an alternate way of finishing off your waistband, and this is actually my preference, the way that I really love to finish off a trouser waistband. So hopefully you found this educational, and maybe you want to give it a try as well. As always, if you have any questions, please leave those down below. I am more than happy to answer those. Until next time, happy sewing.